This video is brought to you by Surfshark. Stick around to hear more about the massive discount that they're offering to the entire upper echelon community. Before diving in, the video will also be available ad-free in an audio podcast form on locals.com to monthly subscribers. It's a way to support the channel that helps get away from YouTube ad revenue, which is pretty unreliable these days. And in addition to that, my entire content library is available on Odyssey, which is a YouTube alternative where viewers can earn credits and support their favorite creators even better. Links are down below for anyone who wants to check those out. Alright, honestly, I thought we were past this. A couple weeks ago, Cyberpunk 2077 and CD Projekt Red came under fire after Jason Schreier posted an article to Bloomberg, because we definitely all go to Bloomberg for gaming news, but anyways. Schreier posted an article to Bloomberg which attacked CD Projekt Red over what is now, technically speaking, a failed promise. The promise itself was fairly simple, and the sentiment is honestly kind of admirable. CDPR wants to not only be known for the quality of their games, but the quality of their employee treatment as well. The company wants to be on the forefront of equitable and fair working conditions, and with that in mind, earlier in the development cycle, they made a commitment to avoid crunch or mandatory overtime. Here's the problem. A worldwide pandemic hit, which radically changed the development process and cratered productivity for, I believe, most of the planet. To reasonable people, that might serve as some sort of valid explanation why the company has now gone back on their initial promise, where once they said their goal was to not have employees work overtime at all in the lead up to Cyberpunk 2077's launch window, though management has also begrudgingly admitted it would still probably happen in some capacity, owing to the scale and the scope of the project. Now, employees are working one extra 8-hour day per week for the 6-week period directly before release. Now, a critical component to this is Polish labor law. I'll try not to rehash, really I will, not too much anyways, because there is plenty more to get to, but Polish labor law has a strict framework when it comes to overtime, which says that employees cannot work more than 8 extra hours per week and no more than 150 extra hours per year, or maybe it's 140, I don't remember, but it's in that vicinity, while also mandating that they be sufficiently compensated for that labor. CDPR is not just compensating them as a result of these guidelines, they are also giving them a 10% game profit revenue share, combined with standard overtime wage increases in the range of time and a half to double time pay, which makes these extra 8 hours once a week for a month and a half extremely profitable for the employees. To be thorough, the Polish labor laws don't universally apply. Independent contractors aren't covered the exact same way. Different tiered workers who might fall into the hourly category instead of the salaried category, again, different application. But for a company who is intently trying to advance their reputation in the industry as not only a producer of quality games, but the producers of a quality work environment, it's hard to believe, and no evidence whatsoever has surfaced to support this. In fact, evidence I will discuss in just a minute here has surfaced to refute this. But anyways, if that is their goal, to be known for the quality of their work environment as well, how realistic is it to expect that they would be seeking out and abusing employment loopholes to maximize forced overtime, directly contradicting their earlier promise? Before going further, it's time for the sponsored ad read, and I know that some people always skip these, so before you do, 83% off and 3 months free with code Echelon if you want a VPN. That's the important part. Today's sponsor is Surfshark, a VPN provider, and many people probably already know what a VPN is, but for those that don't, a VPN, virtual private network, is an added layer of security with a multitude of other applications. Public Wi-Fi, even private home internet, is less than secure in the modern age. Information is very easy to access for a hacker, and a VPN helps prevent that. More interestingly, a VPN can switch your region and help avoid things like censorship. Not only that, but in different regions, Netflix has different movies and TV shows as a function of licensing agreements. Since you can switch your location anytime you want, instead of just seeing what the site has for your country, you can see what Netflix has globally, and the list of things that a VPN can do is very, very long. Surfshark is also the only VPN provider that I know of which allows for unlimited devices on a single account. And on top of that, if using code Echelon, as I said earlier, you will get 83% off and 3 months free with your order. Big thank you to them for sponsoring the channel. Now back on task. Enter the worst writer at Forbes, Erik Kain. It's time to stop defending CD Projekt Red over Cyberpunk 2077 crunch. This article is pretty much exactly what you'd expect from the title. The entire premise is that CDPR is bad for doing this and the game must be delayed. Now, within the article, Erik references a Game Informer podcast, which was released a few days prior and basically disputed everything that Schreier had reported on initially. I'll link that video down below. Same link, same exact link that is in the article. Skip to about 58 minutes in, I believe, to begin the relevant sections on crunch, but I'll also play a few segments right here.
And I feel like there's a really important difference, though, with CD Projekt Red. One, the compensation is above and beyond what they're already getting. Two, it's a short term before launch. And from what I understand from talking to a few people there, there was a discussion on, do we want to delay the game again or do we want to do this? And from what I heard, it was a mass majority saying that they agreed to the 6-day work week. Everyone I've talked to that's over there has not seen it as a crunch. And from what I'm understanding is that it wasn't just a random drop of this is now mandatory. From what I understand is there was a discussion beforehand about weighing the different options. It's a complicated issue, and the fact that the day that they went gold, the conversation came back in flux. And I've talked to a couple of the devs that said they were like so excited to share people the news that it was gold. And one person directly told me, she was like, I'm almost scared to sound proud of what we did. She's like, I'm scared of what people are going to say if I say I'm proud of the work we did. And you shouldn't be scared to say what you've done. And this thing has been in production for how long?
What we can clearly see is a secondary source who claims to have discussed directly with a number of developers, and their findings are completely different. My own speculation? Of course they are different. Shaping a narrative is a calculated skill set. The truth itself has nothing to do with how you can make the truth seem to people. Schreier has a hard-on for gaming industry unions. He makes no pretense, and he pushes that agenda wherever and whenever possible. So if CDPR did technically break a promise and require overtime, he's going to make it seem like the sky is falling and their entire culture is oppressive tyranny. On the other side of the equation is Game Informer. What a lot of people might not know at this stage is that Game Informer is on the shortlist and already has access to Cyberpunk 2077. Cyberpunk 2077 is going to be a massive click farm for them, especially if they have early access, which they do. I want access as well, like early access if I can get it. Everyone does, because it's one of the biggest games in history at this point. And when we talk about shaping a narrative, Game Informer, just like Schreier, has a narrative they want to push in order to maintain and even expand the access that they have been given. Bottom line, both of these parties are self-serving. A reporter from Game Informer says the extra 8-hour workday was agreed upon and that the developers are basically afraid to celebrate their own achievements owing to the bloodthirsty media. And Jason Schreier says the sky is falling and they broke a promise and the portals of hell are going to open because 8 extra hours per week for 6 weeks while getting a massive payout is so inhumane it has to be screamed about 24/7 for the next 3 months. Yes, I'm exaggerating, but not even all that much, because the argument on one side is, this is horrible. Think of their loved ones, think of their mental health, think of the strain, think of the fatigue and the painful, checks notes, 48-hour work week. And on the other side, the argument is essentially, I talked to a bunch of developers too, and that's completely untrue. It was agreed upon, the pay is good, they are proud of their creation. And even if the sky was falling on their heads, it's hard to believe that Game Informer of all publications would say a single thing about it because they already have access to the golden goose of 2020. There are two sides and each of them has a position that contradicts the other, but this poor man, Erik Kain, has just come along and stepped right in it with the worst possible position you can even imagine. The article itself is just all over the place. He wants the game to get delayed, which demonstrates a total lack of knowledge with regards to fiscal deadlines and development costs. He repeatedly compares this to some sort of 70 or 80-hour work week, when in reality, as per Polish law, it is at or around 48 hours per week, which is not even surprising and far from inhumane. And he directly links to the Game Informer podcast while clearly not even watching or truly understanding what was said. But all of this would just be another bad article in a sea of bad hot takes about how bad CDPR must be because they made their workers go from a 40-hour work week to a 48-hour work week for a few weeks before the biggest launch of their career in the aftermath of a global pandemic that completely redefined the production model after they had already delayed the game for a hefty amount of time to avoid this very same issue. And skipping the Christmas retail season just so that a few employees who don't want to work an extra 8 hours per week for a couple weeks don't have to isn't even a position worth entertaining. Except he didn't just put this out there, he tried to adamantly defend it. On Twitter, he began to post a flurry of comments refuting what was being said beneath his article post. And this is where it became clear that he has absolutely no idea what he is doing, what he is saying, or why he is even saying it. In fact, we have found the worst writer at Forbes. There are quite a few great lines in here that demonstrate a complete lack of understanding with regards to this entire issue, but the two that stand out the most appear as follows. Referencing the fact that there was a majority decision to participate in highly paid overtime work rather than delay the game again, he says, quote, "It does not appear that this was voluntary for everyone though," end quote. And referencing the actual Game Informer podcast that he himself linked in the article, he says sarcastically, quote, "Yes, you're right. YouTube qualifies as the barest minimum of research. What a joke, saying that and linking me to some stupid YouTube video," end quote. First, the issue of voluntary overtime. This blows my mind. When and how did we end up in a world where a massive corporation making a decision that the majority of their employees agree with should care at all what the minority who are against that decision want? Employment is not a democracy. You do not get to contradict the decisions of your employer and the decisions backed by a supermajority of your peers and be somehow considered and catered to as if your feelings, your desires, and your preferences matter. They don't. When I was in college, I waited tables to make money on the side. I'm sure many people did as well who are watching this. It's kind of a standard job at that age. And the job sucked. The hours sucked. Everything about it sucked, except for the part where it provides me with the perfect opportunity to put on display how insane and obnoxious this position of equal consideration in the workforce really is. During every shift, we were assigned a section. That's standard for any restaurant. The sections were not all equal sizes. There was the large main room, the smaller side room, and the solarium with large windows. The small, as it was called, contained sections that had two-person tables, mostly, and a couple four-tops with 4 people. The sections in that small area were easier, they were faster, they didn't get reseated as often, and they would basically guarantee you did less work, were out earlier, and could relax on your phone in the side booth for half of the shift. The large, however, had huge tables, mostly 4s, but sometimes up to 8 people, and they got reseated frequently. If you got the large sections, you worked longer, harder, and you got the same compensation because this was not a standard restaurant, and tips were not even allowed. Everyone wanted the small, every single shift, but only a few people would get it, and the others, even though they now had to work extra, and it was not voluntary, just did it because what they want doesn't matter. What they volunteer for doesn't matter. They do the work or they quit. If 100 workers vote and come to an agreement that they will work 48 hours a week for 6 weeks versus 40 hours a week from previously, and 12 of that 100 don't like it, what they want is worth nothing. If they were being forced to do this with no consultation, no supermajority consensus, no extra pay, and no consideration, that would possibly be a problem. But when the vast majority agree, they get incredible compensation, and the actual number of hours is at 48, not 80, as Erik Kain falsely attempted to correlate here. What those 12 dissenting workers want is to be rightly and completely ignored. Poland and the United States are different. American journalists appear to be consistently projecting American issues onto foreign companies because overtime in the United States is an entirely different creature. 80-hour forced overtime with no extra pay? Yes, abusive. Yes, a problem. Yes, be outraged. 8 extra hours for insane compensation when the majority of workers agreed and voted to proceed? No, that isn't a problem, and pretending it is cannot be described as anything other than intellectual dishonesty. But we're not even done, because that second post, that's where the real gold is. In reply to someone linking the very same podcast video that he had linked to in the actual article, where the comment simply stated that Liana Rupert had found different results from her contacts, his dismissive reply of, "Yes, you're right. YouTube qualifies as the barest minimum of research. What a joke, saying that and linking me to some stupid YouTube video," end quote, very clearly shows that even when linking directly to that same exact video and a source claiming contradictory findings, he either did not watch or did not understand that material while using it in his own article and dismissing those that point to it. Overtime happens. When large projects near their deadline, overtime is a reality, and everyone from high school students to retired millionaires should easily understand that fact. In Erik Kain's article, it expands to even say things like, "It's wonderful that CDPR employees have profit sharing as part of their compensation, but that profit sharing could still be part of the deal without crunch. One of the incentives for worker dedication should just be given no matter what. delay the game, no overtime ever, but give them all the rewards and incentives and bonuses that are a result of that overtime and the extra hours that come with it for free. Because workers should get everything and never be expected to produce anything, adhere to deadlines, or be asked to do anything they don't want to, even when the majority of their very own peers agree to those decisions. It's like voting in your English class whether or not you want an extension on your assignment, and 2/3 of the class say, no, let's just get it done right now. And the other third whine and complain that they shouldn't have to, and if they're working on this paper, they can't do what they want to do. Erik Kain would be the one saying, well, since they don't want to, they shouldn't have to, and they should still get an A, because that shouldn't ever, we should never ask people to do things that a few of their peers don't want to do. Just give them all of the rewards and don't make them do the work. How did we end up in a world where that kind of thought process even exists? Right about now is when I would normally do the whole obligatory, but mistreatment is bad, and if this or that or the other thing, blah, blah, treat people good, blah, blah, whatever. No. I'm not going to do that today because any reasonable person out there can easily draw their own line in the sand with regards to what is and is not an abusive or harmful workplace. And an extra 8 hours to bring the weekly total from 40 to 48 for a few weeks for a finite amount of time when the majority has agreed to it. The compensation is sky high and forces outside anyone's control from a cosmic level decimated their productivity for the first half of the year to contribute to that need. Well, you either think that's horrible and abusive and awful, or you're an actual person with a brain who realizes that is just life. Erik Kain gets the worst writer at Forbes award today for saying things like, don't link me some stupid YouTube video about the source that's literally in his own article. Thinking that employment is not only a democracy, but a democracy for the minority, where those who get massively outvoted should still be the ones who are catered to. And for doing all this while perpetuating an idea that, whether it be malicious or negligent, that CDPR is creating some sort of harmful, abusive environment that compares to a 70 or 80-hour tech work week, despite knowing full well that 48 hours is nothing compared to most other industries. Congratulations to Erik. He might not have that award for very long, but by God, today he deserves it. That's it though. If you want support, links down below, merch, locals, Odyssey, Surfshark, as well as another gaming YouTuber to check out, but I'll cut it there and stop rambling. As always, thank you all for watching, and have a nice night.